Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
It turns out that the Netflix comedy special Chris Rock's Selective Outrage was selectively edited by the streamer, but it has nothing to do with censorship. So why did they choose to chop up a much-hyped live event? When Will Smith slapped Chris Rock at the 2022 Oscar ceremony, the incident immediately became infamous, manifesting memes, social commentary, and hot takes from every corner of the internet. Following the slap, Smith publicly apologized to Chris, explained his actions, and accepted his 10-year ban from the Academy.
My behavior was unacceptable, and I'm here whenever you're ready to talk.
While Smith and his wife Jada Pinkett Smith have been vocal about the incident, Rock was largely quiet. Until now. As a comedian, it's only natural that Rock would break his silence on that chaotic night, doing the one thing he knows best: comedy. The couple were a key part of Rock's new Netflix stand-up comedy special, Chris Rock's Selective Outrage. After detailing his issues with expensive yoga pants, ruminating on American politics, and debating controversial opinions, Rock spent the last minutes of his show calling out the Smiths. Seeing as the world has been waiting for the comedian's unfiltered thoughts on the slap, Netflix launched the special with much fanfare, making it their very first live event to air across the world. While it was a largely successful effort, the comedian's performance showed the difficulties of performing live in front of millions. Near the end of the special, Rock delivered a series of jokes about both Smith and Pinkett Smith, which included a flub where he confused Smith's 2015 sports drama Concussion for his 2022 slavery-era drama Emancipation. In the live stream, Rock said, "Years ago his wife said I should quit the Oscars. I shouldn't host cause her man didn't get nominated for Emancipation. The biggest piece of shit ever. No, not Emancipation. I f***ed up the joke." After the mix-up, Rock did that part of the joke over again.
She said, a grown-ass man should quit his job because her husband didn't get nominated for Concussion.
Rock was referencing Jada Pinkett Smith boycotting the Oscar ceremony during the peak of the Oscar So White movement. Despite Rock's quick correction, Netflix decided to edit the flub out of the on-demand version of the live program, according to The Hollywood Reporter, although the exact reasons for the cut are unknown. Was it just an easy fix to make so the special would have more polish, or was the streaming giant trying to avoid the backlash they'd likely get for Rock roasting the historical slavery drama, even if it was by mistake? While Rock messed up the joke in a really awkward way, it reportedly still received applause during the original version of the special. The Hollywood Reporter confirms that Rock is aware of the change and has worked with Netflix to make the necessary edits. Viewers who decide to watch the comedy special on Netflix's official website will see a disclaimer just below the set's title, which reads "Streamed live and edited." The special also no longer features the N-Live logo on the right-hand bottom corner. In the final edited version of the special, Rock effortlessly glides through the joke, never mentioning Emancipation. Some fans may be disappointed that Netflix is undermining the live and unfiltered aspect of the special, especially after making such an event out of it. It's unclear if Netflix would have still edited the special in any capacity if Rock hadn't flubbed his own joke. The publication also highlighted how Chris Rock's Selective Outrage had failed to land in the streaming service's worldwide rankings, even though it came in at 7th place in the US Top 10 rankings.
Are you ready?
Hello everybody, it's Jeff. Everything's been going well for you all. I hope for those of you that have been getting snow that you've never seen before are digging themselves out. Certainly can understand the hard work going into that. I was watching some videos on YouTube here about from people that up in Northern California and places around there that were getting snow, and a lot. Okay, I mean, they got snowbanks up there that my father remembers. Okay, that he would tell me about snowbanks so high I've never seen in my life living in Maine. But high that that my father had told me about when he was a kid, how high the snowbanks would get up in northern Maine, and they were just like that, where they used to make snow caves where they have a rope at the top and they'd have to lower themselves down into the cave, snow cave they would dig out. That's how high up they were, and they were kids. So you're looking at an 8-9 foot high snowbank, and I'm just watching. I mean, because a lot of people were recording, the aftermath, and it's funny because it'd be a nice sunny day out, and everywhere people are on the roofs of their homes digging off 3-4 feet of snow on top of their house. Okay. And, it's not good and they were saying it's heavy. So that means there's a lot of moisture in the snow. And so that's back-breaking work right there when you have to dig out that much snow. And these people were living in a pretty upper middle class neighborhood. So they were big homes, a lot of them, 2 floors and stuff. So, they were working pretty hard out there. And of course, they don't have, hey, Smokey, they don't have like plow trucks like we got around here. I mean, they're using graders for one thing, and they're not making the roads wide enough, so people coming towards each other, they got to go slower. They're going to clip mirrors or scratch each other's door. So it's really quite interesting. How much snow they're going to get. I'm sure it's one that people won't forget as in time, and because there's a lot of videos on the internet about famous snowstorms that happened, way back when, and how much snow people got, and it goes up into that category for those people in California, and like I said, we used to get snow like that in Maine years and years ago, but we haven't gotten anything like that in a long time. And I think the highest snowbanks I ever saw growing up were about maybe 6 feet, if that. That was during the 80s. And, that's, that's nothing, for people out in California right now. But today, you wouldn't even see a 3-foot snowbank now. So that's how much less we get in snow in the wintertime. Like I told you before, all that moisture in our atmosphere has to land somewhere. Okay? It can't just stay up there. Okay, so if we're not getting it here, then somebody's getting the rest of it somewhere else. And we know where it's going. But, it all has to come down at some point. So, Chris Rock had his big moment on Netflix the other night. His comedy routine, and at the end of it, the last 10-15 minutes of it, he got back at Will Smith for the slap that happened about a year ago at the Oscars, and I guess it was long overdue. I mean, I think, in my opinion, I think he did it simply because the public just wouldn't stop asking him about it. Okay, I think he did it because he figured he could make money off of doing it, which he did, because Netflix paid him about $40 million there, I guess. So to do that show, and I guess he figured, instead of putting this at the top of the show, he brought it in at the bottom of it as sort of a finale, a big finale thing, which should just shut people up about it. And and it's true, because if you go online and you go to discussion groups and stuff like I do, and you listen to whenever you bring up that subject, you can get pretty lengthy strings of threads of conversation about that just goes on, and you hear theories and conspiracies and yada yada, and I think after all this time and people are still talking about it, I think he was like sick and tired of hearing about it. He just wanted to move on, and so he figured, well, I'm going to do this at the end of the Netflix show, and that's going to be that, okay? I'm not going to say anything more about it. You know, I'm going to do my dig, and that's it, okay? So I think that's why he did it. Other people are thinking, oh, you know, he's carrying around anger and stuff like that. No, I think it's a performance. Remember, he was also an actor, okay? You know, it's a performance as well as a comedy routine or something. And I'm sure that the more realistic he made it look, the more appealing and the more energy it brought to the audience, okay? So I think that's, you know, the big reason I think why he decided to do it. I mean, he waited all this time. I mean, if he was really that upset about what Will did to him, and that kind of person to go and get revenge, he'd have done this months and months back, okay? But I think he wanted to see if people would just shut up about it and he could move on with his life and nobody would ever think about it. Big mistake. You know, we don't do that in this country. When something happens like that, everybody wants to get right in on, put their nose right into the situation to the point where they want to see this thing going on and on and on. And unfortunately, the proof is court TV. I mean, we follow these big famous court dramas, and everybody has to know everything about what goes on in these things. They got to know every detail. You know, something like this that happened at the Oscars is not going to go away between two celebrities. Not until the public feels like they are satisfied in the answers that they get. So the only way you're going to do that is to do what Chris Rock did. And that's just to, you know, use his talent as a comedian to basically make people laugh and answer their questions so they'll shut up about it. Okay? And I think that was the best way to do it. Now, some people are saying, oh, he took the low road. And I say, well, that's because you're not looking at this from his perspective. And the fact is, he took the high road. He could have took the low road and got back at Will Smith in some other way, something physical or some other way, which a lot of people do in America, okay? We see it every day when people are videotaping fights that break out and stuff like that. People return violence with violence. But he didn't do that. Instead, he waited, cooled off, okay? And then waited to see if the public would cool off. And then when he figured he wouldn't, he decided he was going to go after the public, and that's what he did. And Will Smith would be the butt of the jokes, okay? And I guess he figured, well, if Will Smith, you know, can live with the fact that he slapped a friend of his that he's had for all his life and live with that and act like nothing happened, then he should be able to live with the jokes that I tell about that night at the Oscars, and he'll just have to move on with that, you know. So it's sort of like, you know, it's revenge, but it's also revenge on the public as well to shut them up, and he made some money doing it, okay? I can't think of a higher ground for a comedian to take after having gone through that than what he did, okay? Because, like I said, he really didn't. I don't think he really wanted to discuss it with anybody. I mean, he could have gone to every fucking media outlet and cried about what happened that night, the way Will Smith did. You know, he could have done that, but he didn't. You know, he basically, you know, stayed quiet about it. And that was the high ground he was trying to take, but nobody wanted to accept that. They wanted to have him say something in order to bring some kind of conclusion to what happened on Oscar night. Okay? It's a story, and people have to have endings to their stories that measure up to what they expect. Okay? And so he gave him that on Netflix. And I say, well, you know, this should help the audience or the public calm the fuck down, okay? It's been over a year. People have dug through Will Smith's life, put out all his dirty laundry about everything that he's done, you know, him and his I don't know, wife, I guess. You know, and they've pretty much all decided that Will Smith did wrong, and now they want to hear from Chris Rock and see if he feels the same way, you know, and that's what everybody's like kind of was waiting for. So anyway, that was pretty interesting anyway to watch that. And you know, for a guy of his age, he certainly can roast people pretty damn good. You know what I'm saying? Because you know, there's only like a few comedians I can remember that even in their, you know, when they're really old, you know, like Don Rickles and stuff, who really can, you know, you know, get on people's skin and stuff like that with his jokes. But you know, Chris Rock is one of them. I mean, he's got that ability to do that, and I think, you know, it's not so much that, you know, age would slow him down. It's the talent that he has that it doesn't die. I mean, it's always going to be with him for his whole life. So he's really a comedian. But in this day and age, I'll tell you, it's tough to be a comedian now and tell jokes without offending people. It really is. And when he said that part about, well, the reason why I didn't fight Will Smith that night to get back at him was because I was always told growing up you don't fight in front of white people, you know. and I thought that was funny, you know. But you know, some people would have taken offense to that, you know, the way Will Smith's wife took offense to the joke he made about G.I. Jane, the sequel, you know, and I'm thinking, you know, that's an example of where we are right now. I mean, you can't do these roasts like that in public anymore. I mean, we used to be able to do that in the 70s when we had that, was it Dean Martin roast or something? And they used to have all these people up on the stage, and they take their digs at him and stuff, and they'd have the primary on the stage, you know, could be like an actor or somebody, usually who would get all the jokes, and then they'd have their revenge by getting up and doing their jokes on everybody that was joking with them. And you know, those were really funny things. I mean, that was on, I think, during the time Carol Burnett show was on or something, I think. And the Dean Martin roasts were pretty famous. But a show like that today, I mean, I don't know if it would ever actually get on television. I really don't, because you see, some of the jokes they told back then, you know, would have been considered racy and even offensive to audiences, you know, right now because of our public, you know. And I wonder, you know, when I think about that, I wonder, well, if people are that sensitive today about the kind of comedy they want to see, how is it that, you know, sitcoms that they make these days, and, you know, they call them situation comedies, how they can say that those are funny. I sit and see these things once in a while, and they are just as bland can be. I mean, they really have nothing funny, okay, going on with it, which is why I think they ought to make a lot of these things just slapstick humor, because the verbal jokes that sitcoms and the writers that do these shows put in the dialogue isn't funny. So why not we just go back to the days of like the Three Stooges or something like that, you know, where people are slapping each other and you know, and you know, you got people throwing pies at each other. Why don't we just go back to that? I mean, how offensive can that be, right? I mean, that would be like, you know, you wouldn't have to worry about somebody saying something off color that way, because the joke is always going to be contained inside the show itself. I mean, it's not going to have any bearing at all on the outside world, and people will still laugh their heads off at it, okay? I mean, after all these years, people still watch the Three Stooges and still laugh at the same joke they've seen a million times before, okay? So why not go back to that? If you want to do a situation comedy, let's do a situation comedy that actually has something that people, you know, will laugh about. And stop with these lame-ass dialogue jokes that don't really make anybody laugh. Because what you're doing is you're You're making a show that ends up being nothing more than a drama with a little humor sprinkled in. That's not a situation comedy, friends. That's not the way a sitcom is, okay? I'm sorry. But The Honeymooners has way more humor in their sitcom than any of the shows made today ever will, okay? I'm sorry, but, you know, that's pretty sad when you have to go back, look back at better times on television instead of looking at today. It should be the other way around, right? Because as time goes on, people should loosen up, right, on things. But it seems like we're tightening down more on the restrictions about what can be seen or not seen on television. You know, that's crazy. It's like saying, well, the Model T was so superior to modern vehicles. You know, I mean, it's like, come on, you know, I mean, are we supposed to be advancing or you know, you know, so, I mean, the de-evolution of television in the situation comedy thing is really noticeable to people in my age, because if you grew up during the 70s, you saw the height of comedy, and then after the 80s, you start to see things getting chopped to the point where comedy just isn't comedy anymore. It's just drama with a little bit of humor sprinkled in, but it isn't really it isn't comedy. And, you know, I feel like a lot has been taken away from comedy in the last 15, 20 years. That's really noticeable. And it's sad because it's like, well, now we're not allowed to laugh at anything anymore. Okay? We certainly can't have a show like Sanford and Son on TV where the N-word was thrown around and audiences would laugh at that. I mean, obviously, you can't have All in the Family, a show on TV, although they put it on TV, but at some points they edit that. You know, if you've seen the shows before, then you'll notice where they chopped certain things off to keep it clean for the air. You know, to me, that's like that's a bad sign when you have to take something from the past and clean it up. You know, so that way people will watch it today. I mean, it's sad, and I don't know. It's a good commentary. I imagine Norman Lear would probably see that. You know, how that happened. I mean, I think Norman Lear was trying to do the opposite with his shows, was trying to make it not so, how do I say, we wanted to make it comfortable for the public to look at themselves and see how stupid we are at the things we say and believe, okay, about each other. And he wanted us to laugh at ourselves so we'll grow up and stop doing that shit. I don't know if he succeeded in that. I really don't, because I think, you know, these days, people are way more, well, I'm not going to say way more. I'm going to say, you know, it's out in the open more, the bigotry and stuff like that, okay? And instead of going away and people growing up out of it, we seem to have dove right back into it and are, you know, marinating in it, you know, for some of us. And I would think that comedy should ramp up the, how do you call it, the odds, ramp up the cost of going after this kind of stuff with more Norman Lear type shows. I think they really ought to do that and just put it right in people's face, you know, like they did before, and just show us again, you know, how ridiculous we are. You know, there could be a lot of things done today with shows like All in the Family, taking issues that's going on today, and, you know, like I'll be talking about one here in the second part. There could be things they could discuss on these kind of shows happening in society that, again, would throw some cold water on all of us that we need, you know. And I think that because situation comedy today doesn't do that anymore, I think perhaps, and this is just my opinion here, you can think differently, but I think perhaps it opened the door to allow this problem to evolve and grow bigger in our society, to the point now where people feel comfortable coming out and, you know, saying these people are, you know, shouldn't be here and all this, you know what I'm saying? It's being more racist. And I think you'll see that when comedy kind of got dull, societal problems started to go up, you know, I think there's probably a connection there, you know, a psychological connection to what, you know, things like that. And I think, you know, maybe we need to think about that and say, look, you know, people can get pissed off. You know, they don't have to watch. Nobody's shoving it down their throat. If they don't want to watch, they don't have to watch. But we should be able to do these shows and be true to comedy as we used to be, and let people see themselves in the stuff that we do. Certainly, the best comedy is always based on things that really do happen to people, you know. And I think that, you know, like the Honeymooners and all that. I mean, that's, you know, that's comedy because, you know, it's familiar to us. It's like, you know, things that we've had happen to us, and we see how somebody would deal with it and how it would be funny to them in a comedy situation, you know. But today, like I said, the drama thing, it feels fake from the get-go, and the jokes aren't funny, okay, because we can't really relate to that anymore. I don't know. I mean, I hear the Connors, their next season will be their last, I guess. And, you know, I think it's because that the writing on the show has been just that, drama with a little humor sprinkled into it. When they took Roseanne off of it, they took the actual comedy out of it. Okay? You know, regardless of what she did and said on the outside, okay, removing her from that show essentially just let, you know, it basically shot a hole in the boat and it just slowly sunk, you know. And I don't think they knew what to do with it after that. I don't know why they felt they could get away with doing what they did and not kill the show. But the fact that it stayed on for 5 years, I think, is a miracle in itself, that they were able to go on as long as they did without Roseanne. But there's a part of me that thinks that they did that on purpose, just to, you know, kind of get under her skin and say, see, we could have done this shit without you. You know, even though the numbers don't match at all what they were pulling back in the 80s when Roseanne first did her show back then. The show Connors today doesn't nearly draw the same audience that the original show had done. And so I think, you know, Roseanne made her point very clear to them that, you know, you can't do this show without me. You know, and killing and having me killed off and then doing the show on was just going to blow up in your face and show you how right I was. And I think that's what happened. And so comedy, you know, like I said, it really has to be funny for some. And the audiences that they were trying to grab were people my age who grew up with the original show, and a lot of us tuned out when you know, Roseanne was you know, removed from the series. You know, I'm not saying that the actors they kept weren't bad. No, they're all good actors that were on there. It's just the material they were acting from didn't have Roseanne's seal of approval, if you will, before they started filming it and scripting it. Okay, so because all her stuff was comedy stuff that she did on her stage comedy, and they were shows she wrote and stuff like that. Well, without her there, that was the golden goose they killed, you know, and the show was going to suffer because they had to go get the average sitcom writer out there, which is a nobody and doesn't really have any talent, and put them on the show and try to make them make the show work. And it just, I don't know, the jokes weren't funny, and slowly people just stopped watching it because it just didn't do nothing for them, you know. And so, you know, like I said, for Chris Rock, going back to him, his comedy routine is like old-fashioned from the days that when I was a kid watching it, and it still works. You know, it still works no matter how insulting it might sound to you. It still works, and it gets people laughing. And I think, you know, we need to have more of that kind of comedy in this country, and less people getting pissed off at it. If you don't want to watch it, you don't have to be there. You don't have to buy a ticket to go there to watch it. You don't have to turn the TV on to watch it. If you're that offended, if you're that sensitive, you don't have to watch. That's what the button, the on and off button is for, okay? Jeez, you know, there's lots of things you can watch on TV these days, and it doesn't have to be something that's going to piss you off. All right, so let's go to commercial break. We'll be right back.
This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
I'm Alex Curtis. I'm a lobsterman in Maine, and this is me.
I'm Ruth McLaughlin, and this is me.
I'm Eric Hopkins. I'm an artist, and this is me.
This is me.
Me.
This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
At the end of the journey, the main thing is you. Original.
We're here in Portage, Indiana.
There we go.
Joe Biden with us, the guy who's tearing this country apart. He's tearing us apart.
Maya Wiley, I have some numbers to show you. We'll put them on the screen. This is from a Fox News poll, and a point of information here. Yes, this is a product of Fox News. They are very proud of their polling unit and its integrity. And please note that on the question on a Fox News poll is Trump drawing the country together or tearing the country apart? Now you'll please note the respondents. 59% of their respondents tearing it apart, 31 drawing it together.
Inflation's up, groceries are up.
Inflation is coming down hard, and it is coming down a lot faster than I think people thought. And I've actually been surprised at how rents are sort of rolling over. And they're growing still, but they're growing at a much slower pace. And
Houses, taxes, everything's going up, and nobody wants to do a goddamn thing.
Oh.
You know what? We're going to stand up for America. We're going to stand up for our rights.
Glenn? That's right. I'm on a hippo eating airheads. I'd like a hippo.
Airheads have more fun.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it. It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
So, the other thing I wanted to talk about, as, you know, part of what I was speaking about before in the previous segment about, you know, how people get really agitated over things, are school libraries. Okay, now it's not a new topic, okay? This has been a problem that's been going on for quite a while here in this country. And thinking about it, I think that the real reason why why so many people are having these fits here over what kind of books the kids are reading, you know, if all these stories are true, okay, I'm just assuming that what they're saying is true, which I know some of them are just exaggerating the facts, but if some of this stuff is true, then the only reason why kids or parents are finding books like this in the libraries is because of budget cuts in the school system. And I'll explain why. This is what schools do these days, okay, to get books for their libraries. Now, a lot of times, and I'm basing this on, you know, the schools that I went to in Texas and here in Maine. I don't remember how it was done in Florida when I went to school there, because I was too young. I don't really have much memory of that. But as far as Texas and Maine goes, a lot of the books that they got for their libraries came in the form of donations from the general public, okay? Or they would get it from places like Salvation Army or Goodwill, or, you know, book clubs that they might sign their libraries up, you know, for magazines or things that they get on the side. A lot of the schools will go that way to get these books, because to get books the way some of the more affluent schools do, they can't afford to buy these things brand new off the shelves in some place. You know what I'm saying? They can't do that. It costs way too much money to buy brand new books all the time. So a lot of the books, and you'll see in the libraries, are a mix of maybe some new books and a lot of used books, okay? And they just put them on the shelves. And so they try to get books that are, you know, educational. And I doubt a lot of these librarians will take the time to sit down and thumb through every damn book to make sure there's not a horrid scene or some damn thing being in the book, okay? I think they probably try to stay away from you know, like Harlequin novels or something like that, you know, especially if you're a librarian in an elementary school. So that goes without saying. And I think they try to stay away from, you know, magazines that might be a little racy or something like that, you know, certainly not like out and out Playboy or something, but, you know, something that would have articles in there that are talking about sexual things and stuff like that, you know, like you see in some like Cosmopolitan or something like that. They probably would stay away from that. Now, there's definitely titles out there that librarians have no idea what's in there, okay? They're just grabbing these books from the donations, and they don't have the time or the staff to have everybody sit down and go through every single book that they get and say, oh, this one's no good, and throw it back in the pile. They don't. What they're busy doing is they're cataloging the books, putting the stickers on the backs, you know, or cards or whatever it is, and then they have to alphabetize them to put them in the right slot on the shelf. That takes all day, just to do that part. And we don't pay these librarians nearly enough money to work past 9 to 5, or you know what I'm saying? It's just they don't get overtime pay. So they're hand-to-mouth workers, basically. They work from paycheck to paycheck, and a lot of teachers today do. Okay, there's really hardly any teachers out there that have a decent savings or anything like that to fall back on. They work from hand to mouth. So when I said that, school budgets are the reason why these things happen, if the schools were actually given their worth in tax dollars, they would have the money to be able to buy brand new books that were already pre-selected for schools in the public schools to put on their shelves. Right? I mean, just like they get textbooks that are already made for schools to use, they would be able to get books for the libraries that are already pre-approved to be used in certain schools, and depending on the grades that they teach. They would already have them, okay? But they can't do that. They have to sacrifice one or the other. They need the textbooks, okay? The library books, wishy-washy, okay? It's not important. And I suppose a lot of teachers will say, if you go to a public library outside the school system, that you'd probably find better books to read there than you would in the school, because the school, I don't know why the reason they need to have a school library. I think, maybe it started off as, they didn't want kids out in the public school library, the public libraries digging up books that, teachers didn't read. And so they made school libraries so that way they would have books that were more appropriate for the classes that kids would be taking, okay? And so over the years, money, the introduction of computers and the internet, things changed, and the schools didn't, because they can't match the budget to meet the needs of the public. Because people, when they go to these board meetings, they're always bitching, we're spending too much money on school, on education in our system here, in our towns and our cities. We're spending too much. And the funny thing is you go to these cities and these towns and you look at the schools and they look like they were built 100 fucking years ago, and they say that, we're spending too much. Really? When was the last time you came and visited the inside of the school here? I mean, we got pictures on the walls of the graduates all the way back to the 1940s here when the school was around. These places need money. They need facelifts. They need modifications. Especially here in this state, I have to say, there's a lot of schools in Maine that are so old that, in any normal world, they would be condemned, okay, because they simply wouldn't meet the criteria for people to even be in, because it's not safe. But we have schools like that. And I imagine in your state, wherever you are, in some of them small towns that you have, they probably have schools like that too. And that's a sign of the last time we put big money in public school systems, I believe, was in the 1950s. After that, we just kind of neglected it. And it shows. And it's funny because we have old buildings and they try to integrate new things into the buildings like computers and stuff like that. And it just isn't, it doesn't, the chalkboard really isn't something that many schools use anymore. But yet there's still schools out there with chalkboards and the teachers are still using them. Remember the overhead projector, that thing you put stuff on, like those clear plastic laminates, and it projected up on a screen. A lot of schools still use them, and that's like old stuff. I mean, so there's a lot of old antiquated things. I mean, you'll never find more antiques in your society than in a public school, because the schools these days are using stuff that's so old that the people using them probably don't even remember seeing them when they were kids. But they're using this stuff. And so when people sit there and bitch and complain about, the public school systems are overpaid and the teachers are overpaid, don't you believe that for one fucking second, okay? It's the exact opposite of what they say. The teachers today spend about $100,000 to go to college, or maybe even more than that, to go to college to be a teacher, and they get paid what, $40,000 a year, if that. Okay, what the hell good is that? You're spending, 3 times that amount to go to school to learn to be a teacher, and you're and that's you're only going to get paid 3 times less than what you spent. It's just it's ridiculous, and it's one of those things where the cost should match the product. Okay, if you're only going to get a job that's only going to pay you that kind of money, then you shouldn't be spending more than that to get the education for it. But you see, we don't know how to deal with education in this country. We don't know how to deal with public education in this country. And when things come floating back to us from the sea of our inadequacies and stuff, and we see all this shit we don't like, we turn around and we throw all the blame on the school itself. And we don't stop to think that, well, maybe the school wouldn't have had this problem if you guys would have gave them the money they needed to begin with, so that way they could get the appropriate stuff to put in the school. But you guys said no. You didn't want them to have that. And plus, you turn around and you say you got too many teachers, and so the school has to make cuts on that. And then you bitch about the food, and so the school's got to make cuts on that, or adjust for people's demands on school lunches. I mean, you're constantly fighting with the school all the time, when the bottom line is you people need to give them more money, especially these days where inflation is still going up, okay, where things are still expensive, and we still bitch about the cost of these schools. You cannot have a public school, okay, and expect it to work for nothing. All right? I mean, if you want your kid to go to a good school, fine. But support that school when your kid is in there. Or even when it's not, when you don't have any kid in there. I mean, you want your children, you have a responsibility as a citizen to see that children are given a good education and not have to be confronted with these book issues here and have the extreme right wing get all in a twist to justify them wanting to destroy a whole institution because of people underfunding a school. You don't want that to go on. Okay? So, like I said, I think that a lot of this controversy here can be traced right back to people constantly yanking budgets out of the schools. They deliberately stack the board so that way people are constantly, against the school system. Cut here, cut there, do this, do that, and at the same time the schools are saying we need money for this, supplies, and, all this other stuff you guys want your kids to do, and then, of course, the school itself, they spend a lot of money on the sports systems, that they have, the school football team or the school basketball or whatever the game is. The school spends a lot of money on that. Well, they have to pass that on to somebody, okay, the cost of that. Okay, that why can't people talk about cutting those things instead? No. You see, that affects the community when the people that want to see their kids out on the field playing games, to them, that's more important than what kind of books they get in school. Okay, the school is supposed to be there to educate, not to entertain the public. Okay, those kids will play those things on recess or in gym class or something. But if you want a town team, then let the town create a place to make a football team and have no relation at all to the school. Okay, let the town put money aside just for that. Okay, to say, well, we're going to have a fill in the blank town football team, sponsored by the citizens in the community. It has nothing to do with the school. Okay, it's just a team, and kids can still join it. Okay, and they don't have to worry about having to fight with the school to get money for this or that to keep the team going. It'll just be the team, and what they'll do is they'll just select people from the school. Would you like to play on our team? And they do that, and the school can stay right the hell out of it. Why can't they do it like that? Why do they have to have the school itself be linked to the goddamn sport? That takes money right there. And I think things like that could be eliminated without affecting the quality of education the kids get, and I think that, like I said, as far as this thing here with the books and stuff in the books that people are having a pissy fit over, you can tell the people that are complaining, Well, when was the last time you voted in favor of an increase in the school budget? You know, when was the last time you said that, you know, the teachers should earn more money? You know, I doubt any of them would be able to raise their hand. I know around here they wouldn't be able to. They're pretty stingy around here where I live. The schools suffer as a result. In fact, a lot of students, even after they graduate high school, have to take prep courses in order to get into college because the education they received in the high school wasn't enough to get them into, like, the University of Maine here. Okay? And that's been a problem in the state here. It goes all the way back, you know, into the 60s. You know, the state is a very poor state, always has been. You know, obviously we had some bad governors here, but but Maine's always been like that. And to, you know, get into the University of Maine, which is not considered like a really big, you know, like Yale or anything like that. It's just an ordinary college, a university. But, you know, people, you know, people sometimes, and these are good students too. I mean, the fact that they passed their entrance exam to get into college in the first place, you know, some of the schools are doing their jobs, but a lot of schools, you know, are having a hard time meeting the requirements for their students, and some of them are taking the test 2, 3, 4 times before they can get in there, and so they end up having to take, you know, courses, you know, pre-courses or something in order to brush up their knowledge and things. But we need to invest more in education, because when you do that, you get back 1,000-fold when you invest in that. You know, you take a look at when they implemented the GI Bill, and when people started using it, how there was a boom in a lot of things in you know, the sciences and stuff like that, and engineering. We had a lot of uptake in that when people who were in the service got out and were able to use that program to go back to school, to college, to learn a trade or a skill. And when they came out, they put it to work, and it raised productivity in this country considerably. And a lot of people, I guess, they just didn't care or even notice the difference. You know, I don't know. But I think people, you know, by and large, you know, they live their life, and it's only their own life that they worry about, and they don't think about what goes on around them every day, and how things that happen around you can change the kind of road you're walking on to get to someplace. You know, you don't want that to happen. You know, when people plan their life out in their minds, they think they have it perfect, but life kicks you right in the nuts all the time. And the thing is that a lot of times it's our own damn fault that it happened, because along the way we didn't see something we should have. We neglected something that we shouldn't have. And in this situation here with our kids being confronted with books and stuff in school that, you know, parents don't like, that's the parents' fault, for one thing, because, you know, for, like I said, they've never been on the side of the school, and so to them, to just bring the school system down is a victory. In fact, it's a loss, not just to their community, but to the nation at large, because when you damage the education system, the damage is like throwing a rock in a pond. It you know, it ripples outward everywhere. Things happen, and so we have to be way more serious about the kind of things that we want to deal with in the school system, and understand that these schools can do better if they have more money to do things with. And a lot of things in the beginning are going to cost a lot to make up for all the years that they were neglected. So budgets are going to have to come up quite a considerable amount. And I don't know, you know, I mean, you know, how these cities and towns and stuff like that are going to be able to meet that, you know, recommendation from me about investing back into schools, because a lot of places have mismanaged their budgets so bad that, you know, they're in deficits. And so there's a lot there, I guess, a lot of blame to go around when it comes to that. And it's not just the school, okay? It isn't just the school, it's also the communities. It trickles around, okay? Everyone's to blame when it comes to that. And unfortunately, people, instead of dealing with problems, they like to just anger the public about them to get their vote. And then when they get their vote and they're put in the seat that they want, they forget all about what they needed, what they promised everybody they were going to do to fix things, okay? And so the problem, the can, as they say, gets kicked further down the road. And I think the can can't be kicked anymore because it weighs about 3,000 pounds, and now we have to either climb over it and keep going, or finally get this thing taken care of so that way we can continue to go as a society. But boy, do we have a lot of things to fix in this country, a lot of things. And I can't, and even in the smaller, like in just the states in this country have a ton of shit they got to fix. Okay? We are so, swamped with chores. We'll just call it chores, okay? It's like living in a house and you never do the dishes, you never take out the trash, you never clean the floors, you never do the vacuuming, you never wash the windows, okay, for weeks, months, and years. And then one day you decide to get off your butt and say, I'm sick of this place the way it looks, I'm going to clean it. And you look around you and you're like, oh my God. Okay? That's what it's like right now in this country. We've taken stock of all the things that have gone wrong that we neglected for 100 years in America, and we're going, oh my God. How are we going to deal with this? Okay, it's overwhelming. And that's why I say this is the time we're going to be spending the next 100 years, maybe even more than that, the next 100 years paying for the lack of attention we gave to this country in the previous 100 years that the nation went through. We're going to be cleaning up our fathers, our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers' trash, forever. And we have to come up with some goddamn creative ways to do it without harming the environment. And that, my friends, comes from a good education in the sciences. And only that is going to save us. If we keep taking money away from schools so their sciences are crap, then you're not going to get any innovation at all. We'll have to depend on some other country to bail us out out of the trash that we still have in the house. So anyway, that's about all I wanted to talk about for today. And so I hope everybody has a great rest of the week, and I hope everybody keeps their ears open to COVID-19 news, and subscribe and comment. I'd like to hear from you. And please treat each other well, and don't get upset and annoyed over little things, and certainly don't talk politics with people. Okay? Why do you think I do this on here? So that way I don't get a fist thrown at me whenever I'm talking to people out in public. It's sad that people just can't agree to disagree anymore these days, but it is true. I mean, politics is a touchy subject, just like religion. It always has been. But it used to be dealt with differently. Today, it's dealt with violently, and that's not something any of us want to get into. So that's why I just say, be careful about that. So, talk to you all later. So take care.